All right, how's everybody doing tonight? Awesome. All right, well, first of all, I sent an email to everybody. One of them, the email's about creating a video. You're like, what in the world did I get that for? Well, there's a contest going on for my CIS 280 class, which is mobile app development, on creating a video using a program called Powtoon. And I'll show you an example here of one, what Powtoon is, and then talk a little bit about the contest, what it's about. And you don't have to be a video creator to use this software, this online tool, but thought I'd open it up to everybody. Let me go full screen with it, be better. Okay, so that's an example of one of the videos out there created with a tool called Powtoon. So here's the video challenge. It's due March 27th, Friday, March 27th. Create a 1-minute Powtoon animation promoting CIS 280 course. Go to powtoon.com, create a free account. It's a free creative tool that you really don't, like I said, you don't have to know how to create a video. It has all the tools for you, how to do it, how to drag objects in there and everything. And basically, it's a free tool to create promotional videos and even lesson plans and things like that. It's fun, real easy to use. You guys will fall in love with it. The video will be used to recruit students into the CIS 280. You can watch the video I just showed you, which is a link is here. There's also information about the course here. The rules basically is 1 minute in length, be creative, focus on why students should take the class, use myivc.org and my email address there for the contact info on the video. And if you're interested, send me an email at c.conkle@rockvalleycollege.edu. Deadline March 27th at midnight. Submission, submit the URL of the Powtoon video to my email address there. Judging and prizes or prize. A panel of faculty and students will judge the video. Announcement of the winner will be made on April 10th. A $100 Amazon gift card. So, I know our students can do a better job of the video here that was created. I helped in that, but it was just something we threw together. But check your email. It has a link to the Facebook event. And then if you have any questions, you can definitely email me. Has anybody ever used Powtoon before or heard of Powtoon? Okay, it's a lot of fun. I think once you guys get in there and start playing with it, you will love it. You can use it for a whole bunch of stuff. Like it has greeting cards you can create, promotional stuff for social media, and you can create, and it's free. It doesn't cost anything. The free account, the only difference between the free account and the paid account, like we have, is the free account puts a little Powtoon logo on the bottom right corner of the video. And you can create drag and drop objects in there and animation and all that cool stuff. So So avail yourself to that, read your email. Love to have, look for a lot of submissions, and not just to get the $100, which would be cool, $100 gift card, but to learn something new, something cool to use. Any questions on that? If you have questions, see me after class. Be more glad to answer any questions you might have. If it goes well, we're going to expand it to other courses in our division and go from there. Okay, so tonight we're going to talk about exposure in week 5. Your work you've submitted last week looks really good, still grading it. We're going to go over some notes here in a second on EV, exposure value. Before we do, though, I'm going to talk about our in-class and our take-home. The in-class actually is a take-home. It's a take-home exercise where you get to utilize Picasa again, just for practice, to create your contact sheet, another contact sheet. Use the photos from last week, the 30 photos you took last week. And I put on here to, let me blow this up a little bit, circle at least 5 photos, but I also put on here, because Picasa, sometimes you might not like the stuff they have for you to select pictures or whatever. So you can mark on the caption of the photo, selected or something like that if you want to. But you're going to circle or mark selected by typing in the caption selected on the photo. 5 photos that you like the best from the 30 from last week that has the best ISO setting out of all the 30 photos. Save as a JPEG in Picasa and submit it below. There's a link here in the take-home exercise on the step-by-step that you've already looked at before. I just put a direct link in there so you'll have it. Questions on that? So you're just creating a contact sheet again using Picasa. And then your homework, after we get through talking tonight about EV value, which is exposure value, the assignment is basically you're going to take 5 photo settings with 3 exposure settings. Photo setting examples would be mall, student center, park, your workplace, and your house. The mall would be like -1, 0, +1. Student center, -1, 0, +1. Same for park, same for workplace, same for your house. And you'll learn what those values are tonight. You'll label the photos, the name of your setting, so mall maybe, -1, 0, +1, all the way down to the 5th setting. Create a photo album week 5 and upload your 15 photos. So let's go ahead and jump into the discussion, which on the previous screen is a PDF for 2 previous screens back actually. Notes for exposure value. So way to control your exposure. And on your cameras, we'll look at it here in just a second, but on your cameras there's usually a button or it's in your menu, and it might look like this. And it shows up, find out. So it looks like, okay? And so something like that on your menu or screen, that's the exposure value. Exposure value compensation, plus and a minus. What it does is, well, before we get into exposure value, the reason that the camera uses what's called metering, which exposure value is a part of that family called metering, it selects an aperture and shutter speed combination that believes will give the proper exposure. So sometimes it determines the wrong exposure value needed for correct exposure. So when you guys, by default, when you're playing with your camera and you're getting ready to take a photo, Sometimes the sensor will not understand or be fast enough sometimes, according to lighting, on what the correct exposure should be. It might be wrong in what it selects. And that's where exposure value comes in. Exposure compensation, you slightly over expose the image or slightly underexpose the image to offset the sensor, how it's reading the light in a room. Now your eyes might be like, this is perfect lighting, there's nothing wrong with it. An example for using this would be in a cloudy day, say it's partly sunny with clouds going around, right? If the cloud goes over the sun as you're taking a photo, that can cause some fluctuations in lighting. And if you've ever had this happen where you've pressed a button on your camera halfway down and your focus has just started to do this type of thing, you back and forth. You ever had that happen on your camera and you cannot take a photo? It will not let you do it because it's just focusing back and forth continuously because of the clouds overall or whatever. Well, besides maybe up in your ISO or something, one of the things you can do is putting your camera in manual mode and manipulating this exposure value will allow you to override the automatic adjusting of focus. And so exposure value will just do that. It will help you apply an overexposing image to what's out there hitting the sensor or underexposing the image. And this week we're going to play around with just the middle one first. We've got basically +0 is the very middle, and then to the right you got +1 and +2, -1 and -2. By default, unless you've ever played with the EV value, your cameras, every time you turn it on, is always going to be set to 0 on the EV value. And you're going to have to manipulate it each time if you need it. So why would we use it? Good question. To ensure a properly exposed photo. And so it's different than ISO, whereas ISO, remember, fakes out the sensor to tell it if it's dark in here. Instead of ISO being 100, might have to make it 400, 500, 600 for it to fake out the sensor. EV value doesn't fake out the sensor. What it does is actually up the way that the light is hitting the sensor. The EV value does. And so it doesn't touch the sensor. It just basically controls how light is hitting the sensor. And by increasing, it's going to, like say, overexpose, or decreasing, underexpose it. There's a universal symbol, much nicer than my orange symbol up there. So pretty simple. For exposure compensation, you basically use a plus symbol to add more light to your pictures, making it lighter. And the subtracting part, -1, -2, if you want to subtract light from the pictures, making it darker. And so you'll either increase or decrease the light value. Here's an example of a photo in succession of a knight in shining armor type of model photo. Very left is -2, then -1, then 0, then +1, 1.3, 1.6, +2. Now the way it views on the overhead, probably more than likely the best lighting without too much overexposure probably would be maybe like the 1.3 maybe. The +1.3 looks pretty good. The +1's a little dark, and it keeps getting darker past that. Past the 1.3, it really gets whitewashed and things are starting to clip out as far as the clipping of the legs here are totally whitewashed into the background. And so that's what clipping basically means. So normal exposure, most average scenes reflect about 18% of the light that falls on them. And it can even be, and some scenes are worse than others, okay? White. Let's talk about white for a second. Snow, okay? Snow reflects probably, fresh fallen snow probably reflects 70, 80% of light that hits it, just because of the nature of the snow, right? But let's talk about a tree, okay? Just a normal tree, midday. The trunk of a tree, still going to bounce off about 20% of light. You think, it's dark, how does it do that? It's just the nature of the object, okay? In the morning, regardless of what time of year, well, specifically, let's talk about like spring, summer. What's on the grass first thing in the morning when the sun's coming up? The dew, right? And the dew, when you take a photo, when dew's still on the grass, in fact, it's covering not just grass, it's covering everything. You don't see it maybe, but it's covering cars, it's houses, fences, tree leaves, everything, right? Flowers. And everything just looks different when the dew's out, right? Things glisten, and when you take a photo of things, it seems like it's almost like it sometimes like you're in a wonderland or something sometimes. And you're like, this is just Rockford. This is not Wizard of Oz or something. But sometimes you can get some pretty cool photos early in the morning because of the dew, the way it bounces off of things and reflects off of things. So, but the average scene, indoor, outdoor, either one, again, just average, around 20% of light is being reflected or bounced off of it. Like in this example here, we have this person on about midway up on this apparatus here, and you'll notice there's some shadows, definitely. You have shadows over here, shadows on her arm, but everything else is fairly well lit. But where the darkness is, or let's talk about the lightness, like on her jeans, on her teeth, on her forehead, on her arms, on the pole, right in the middle, that's where light's being reflected, all right? Our skin reflects light, regardless of what the skin tone or pigmentation of your skin is going to reflect light. Reflecting more than 18% would be like beach scenes, bright sand, snow-covered landscapes. In these cases, all you need to do is subtract from the exposure value, and it'll make those scenes darker, all right? And the reason I like to use exposure value, probably more so than ISO, it's not, you don't use EV value in extreme cases. What I mean by that is, like in this room, EV value really wouldn't help much. ISO is what you'd need to really bump up 600, 700, 800 probably to take a photo in here. EV value is going to help you in those unique, nuanced situations to where the lighting might be fairly good, or it might be not terrible, but not the greatest. It's not like ideal, really, but it's not like extreme. So in non-extreme instances, EV value works perfect. And it's more easily accessible on your cameras than ISO is, as far as to do something with it. Because it's usually right at your thumb, near your thumb, to where you can quickly bump it up or bump it down as needed. Now, some of your cameras will have to go deep into the menu, but most of your cameras will have it fairly close to the menu. So what I like to do is, I'm going to stop here for just a second and see if you can find on your cameras the EV value. And I'm just going to kind of walk around, give you about 30 seconds to a minute here to find it. Just fire up your camera, see if you can find the EV value. And again, it might be in your on your dial on the right side of the camera. It might be in your menu. For the most part, you'll be able to get the EV value on auto mode or either on manual mode, either one. You should be able to get the EV value. In fact, the EV value, most cameras today, you can access from any one of your settings, whether it be like, say, aperture mode or ISO mode or shutter mode, TV mode, AV mode. You'll be able to access your EV value. So I'm just going to walk around real quick to see if you know where it's at. If not, I can help you figure it out. Awesome. Yep, there's right there in the top right. Awesome. Good. Okay. Good. There you go. And you'll notice when you go to the EV at first, yours is right there. And you press it actually just once. It will pop up the screen. A lot of times the manipulation on EV comes in whenever you tap on it one time. There you go. And then it gives you a little menu to where you can play with it and bring it up either positive or negative. So you know where it's at. And again, for the most part, on most of your EV buttons, regardless of where you're at on your camera setting wise, auto, manual, whatever, process is this. You tap it once. Once you tap it, you can then, usually has a slider type of thing where you can slide it either to the positive or the negative on a menu, basically. And then, so it's much quicker to get to, I think, and accessible than ISO. Okay? And what it'll do basically, and you'll see a drastic change the more plus you go and the more negative you go as you play with it this week. Now, dark scenes are where you basically reflect less than 18%. This one's showing an example of a dark shaded area of a tree in the ground area, deep shadows, dark foliage, black cloth. And here, to compensate for this, you would use the plus symbol on EV value. And it'd be overexposure. You'd be applying overexposure on purpose. Others would be like subject against a very dark or light background, where the subject, the main subject will be dark. Subject against a very dark background. First one's very light background. Second, very dark backgrounds. Main subject will be light, D2 light. And then scenes with very high contrast, like say for instance, midday with the sun beaming and you're standing next to a red car, okay? Or you're standing next to a statue of some type that's a white statue or something like that, where the light's just bouncing everywhere, all over the place. So to sum it up, to lighten the picture, you increase the plus exposure to increase it. To darken it, you decrease with the minus symbol. So that's it as far as on the photo tutorial or photo talk about exposure. Now I want to kind of shift gears here and go over once again here, because I want you to be able to maybe get some of these done tonight here as far as on your, I want you to do the take home exercise at home for the context sheet, again using Picasa. And the last ones you guys submitted looked really good. And by the way, in Picasa, you can download extra plugins if you haven't figured that out on Picasa, like extra tools and like little stars or buttons or butterflies or stuff like that. If you want to tag the photos for this week for your context sheet to include like an icon of some type, like an image, like I just mentioned, like a butterfly or a star or something like that, you can definitely do that, okay? Doesn't have to just be a circle. But let's talk about your take-home assignment. So I'd like you to maybe have time to knock out some of this tonight before you leave campus. You can do it here in the building. You can go to the student center and knock out at least 2 of them, maybe 2 or 3 of these settings. So what you're going to do is, with your camera in front of you now, go ahead and fire it up, and we're going to pretend that you are somewhere where you're going to take a photo. And in this room, just kind of look at an area of this room that's focusing away from an individual, like at the wall, maybe over here, or even up front. And then what I want you to do is play around with and manipulate your EV value to go -1, 0, and then +1, just to see the differences in range. You don't need to take a photo. Just you'll see the differences in range in your LCD viewer. And so that's what you're going to do. You're going to basically find 5 different photo settings. You can do 2 settings in this building if you want to, which a number of students have already done this semester. You can knock out a couple of them before you leave tonight. But the main thing I want you to play with is, once you've taken the photos and you get to your house, is when you're putting them together, you really see the difference when you get them on your computer screen, as far as the differences between a -1, a 0, and a +1. Like tonight, it's dark outside, so you can even do it in darkness. Okay, so as you walk out, You can do this in darkness with no flash. If you force your camera to use no flash, you can use a -1, 0, +1, and you will see a significant difference in the lighting exposure hitting that sensor, okay? Because most of your cameras, when you try to take a picture, if you walk outside tonight, it's going to want you to use flash, okay? It's going to want you to use it. Well, if you fake it out with the using ED value to over or underexpose, like tonight when you walk outside the building, there's enough light in the parking lot that you might not need flash. But if you do a -1 in the parking lot tonight as you leave, or if you're in your car and you try to take a picture outside, you'll see it darken up quite a bit on a -1. On a +1, you will see it lighten up quite a bit. Makes sense? Yes.
I move like 300 check.
Well, yeah. You're not gonna be able to do it if your camera's dead. Okay, you'll have to charge it up when you get home. So, any questions on this? I know I'm letting you out super early tonight, but I wanted you to be able to get this finished before you leave, or most part finished. And the best way to do it is just to play around with it and to take the photos and to take advantage of your time you've got tonight. I know, has anybody not been to the student center here? You've not been to the student center? Into the new area, the atrium area? Where they have the overhead projector and everything in there?
I think the question about the area.
Yeah.
What happened to the glass doors?
The glass doors.
When I first went to the atrium a couple of years ago, both sides of the atrium doors like glass their own, with the Rockefeller symbol like
Yes.
printed in on.
Yeah.
What happened to them?
No, I don't. I don't know what happened. Yeah, probably somebody broke
I
them.
know one shattered, but I thought there was like one set.
I know the story I heard was they were very expensive, and when the glass is shattered, instead of having, because those were etched in, the doors themselves were expensive as in and of itself, and the etching part of it was like real expensive. And so they just said forget it. So which I don't know. And so you can buy the expensive etched doors again. So anyway, if you've not been over to there, that'd be a good area to actually do the EV value inside of that student center area as well before you leave. And so, any questions about your take home? All right, we are done tonight. Awesome. See you guys next week.